Objective 4, demonstrate knowledge of principles and evidence-based instructional practices for developing reading fluency at all stages of reading development. So now as we move into this fourth objective, these topics are going to start to, the objectives are going to start to narrow in scope quite a bit. Objectives 1, 2, and 3 were really large and talked about a lot of things. Objective 4 is a bit more narrow, and we're going to just focus in on fluency for this video. So what is fluency? Fluency is a combination of three things. It is the ability to read a piece of text accurately, meaning you don't make errors, quickly, and with proper expression. And when we say expression, what we mean is when we tend to speak, our voice goes up and down in pitch, and it has certain pauses, and we choose to emphasize different parts of the sentence for clarity. And we picked up that mostly by modeling, by hearing what good speech sounds like, and then mimicking that back. But for students that struggle with it, they can be taught that expression explicitly, as you'll see in a second anyway. So that's it, the combination of accuracy, quickly, pace, and expression. So when we talk about accuracy and pace, what we're talking about is the combination of those things is automaticity. So to read fluently, you need to be automatic, which means that you're reading accurately and you're reading quickly. So we're taking that pathway where we're just going from see the word, read the word, very quick and very accurate. What we're not doing is we're not spending time, we're not spending brain power going to that other pathway and trying to decode the words. So if we're not familiar with the spelling pattern of the word, we're going to have to slow down and sound it out, okay? Which is going to mean that our pace is going down. So if we're slowing down to sound things out, we can maintain accuracy, but our pace is going to go down. Or if we go really fast, but make a bunch of errors, and we just kind of blow through things very quickly, then our automaticity is still going to be poor, because even though we went fast, we actually read very few words correctly per minute. Okay, so how do you develop automaticity? So it's going to be two things. You are increasing the rate, increasing the speed, or you are increasing the accuracy. So how do we develop that? Exposures and practice with the things to be learned. So if you're going to work on the accuracy piece, because students are making a lot of errors, maybe they're not familiar with certain phonics patterns or phonics rules. So you can explicitly teach those patterns and those rules and those sounds to make students' reading more accurate. To increase rate, what we do is we give students multiple opportunities with the text, so that as students become more familiar with the text, they'll have to spend less, we'll say brain power, but really what I'm referring to is cognitive load. They have to spend less energy focusing on the text, and they get to spend more energy on keeping their pace and their processing. Okay, so that allows them to get faster. Is the less you have to think about the words, the quicker you have them, the faster you get to be. For most students, about 5 successful encounters for a word are what's needed to achieve automaticity. But of course, our students that struggle with reading are going to require sometimes many more than that, and we do what is necessary. Okay. On the other side of the automaticity piece is prosody. Prosody is the appropriate use of intonation, phrasing, and this is also known as reading with expression. Like I said before, it's mostly developed through modeling, but you can also teach it explicitly. So there are things you can do with prosody, like you put a sentence out and you underline the phrases in the sentence to help the students see how you would naturally. So you do that, you first read the sentence, you model it, and then you kind of have to become aware of your own phrasing when you naturally read it, because we often don't spend any time thinking about our prosody. It just comes out naturally. So we have to spend some time thinking about our phrasing, and then we can help the students by uh, modeling to them how we did it, and then have them do explicit practice by chunking it, doing reading just the phrases to get the intonation right, and then putting it all together and ultimately getting more fluent, right? We're talking about fluency. What we want is fluency, that natural, beautiful, quick, and accurate reading. Um, to get prosody, though, you're going to have automaticity, right? So if you're going to get fluency together, to have the brain power to spend on thinking about phrasing and intonation, you're going to need to have the words be automatic, right? So let's look at a diagram. This is kind of helpful, I think, to break it all down and look at the vocab, right? So fluency is the combination of these two fancy things, automaticity and prosody. Okay. And automaticity, we have accuracy and rate. But let's put this in plain English. What is fluency really? Fluency is just good reading, right? When I'm reading a page to you, or a good reader is reading a page out loud to you, they are reading it fluently. So we can often say that synonymous just sounds like good reading. Okay. And what is good reading? Good reading is both correct and fast, which is just automaticity, right? So we can have correct and fast is just a combination of those two things. And then down here, we have appropriate phrasing and intonation, also known as expression. That's what we mean when we say prosody. So all of these things, correct, fast, and appropriate phrasing, that all is what good reading sounds like. And that's what we're looking for when we practice fluency. So you're going to be asked about some evidence-based practices for fluency. And the one that the MTEL seems to focus on, totally appropriately, is called repeated reading. This is also known as hot and cold reading. This is also known as the Newhouse fluency routine. This is, programs like Read Naturally or something like that will use this method to directly target fluency, right? So if we're in, but when I say directly, I mean like we're not working on something else to help fluency. We're working directly on the fluency. So here's a routine that we would do is we would have the student do what's called a cold reading, where they're just reading it for the first time, no pressure. And then they graph their reading, and the teacher makes a notes of the errors. Okay, so here you go. Here's a page. Here's, we expect the page to take, between 1 minute to 3 minutes or something like that, depending on the age. So we give them the page, they read it, we record how long it took them, and we record their errors. Okay, then we're going to take that data and practice with the student rereading the words they didn't know. And remember, we're going to get at least 5 exposures until they get them accurate. After that, we're going to kind of expand out to the sentence level to practice punctuation. So we're going to be highlighting the punctuation, the commas, and the periods and question marks, etc. So we're going to practice all that stuff at the sentence level. Then we're going to do the swooping and the phrasing. So this is the prosody practice. This is where I was talking about before, where you would model it to the student, you would listen for your own phrases, and then you would work with the student to underline the phrases and the passage so they know that they should take a breath there, or they should raise the pitch in their voice there, etc. Again, you can get like super crazy technical with prosody, but it should mostly be done by just making explicit what you are doing to the student and scaffolding it, chunking it into small pieces so that they can just become more aware of what you're doing and modeling it. You don't need to introduce lots of crazy vocabulary in terms of the prosody. Like students shouldn't even know. I don't even really care if a student knows what the word prosody means. Not important. What is important is that they're able to listen to you read things with nice phrasing and then be able to apply that and eventually generalize that to novel passages. Lastly, you're going to do what's called a hot read, where you get a clean copy of the passage. Again, if you are marking for errors, all that thing is not marked up. And then you're going to have the student reread it again. And you can do this over the course of days if you're just devoting a very small amount of time for fluency. Usually that's the recommendation is develop short amount of time for fluency and just be very consistent with how you're doing it. Not you don't want like an hour block of fluency practice once a week. That's not going to be super effective. What's going to be really effective is like 10 minutes every day. That's how you want to teach fluency. So you'll do that hot reading, and what the student will see is like, oh my God, it got so much faster. There's some positive reinforcement there. They're reading, they're improving, and they can see it when you graph it. So here's what it looks like. When the student does the cold reading for this week one, for this story, they got, 105 words correct. WCPM stands for words correct per minute. And we have to count corrects because accuracy matters. We can't just let students just read as quickly as they can and make a bunch of errors. What matters is how many words correctly they meet per minute. So that's what WCPM stands for, words correct per minute. So they read 105 words correct per minute on the cold, and then they do get that explicit instruction and the errors they made, and then they do their hot reading later, and oh my goodness, they're up to 140 words per minute now. And so what you're going to see over time is something like this. Students getting that explicit instruction here are going to be able to apply those lessons to the next cold reading, and their cold reading is going to look a little bit better. And then same thing with the next week as their hot readings improve as well. Some people say we only care about the cold reading. We care about both, to be honest. I like seeing hot readings go up. Obviously, the cold reading is going to be more indicative of what students do when they're looking at a book that they've never read for the first time. Or sort of like if they're being assessed on novel things, the cold readings can be more indicative of their fluency. But also, I'm super happy for the student because they tend to care more about the hot reading going up as well. That's what they're focusing on. And we're, of course, encouraging that and happy for them as well. And we want to see the hot readings improve. They will plateau out. There's no grade given for this data. But 170 words correct per minute is very fast, very, very fast. And of course, this is probably an unrealistic rate of improvement, but this is a student who's reading better quite quickly. In fact, I would assume they were almost sick or something, and this was kind of falsely low. They're getting better very quick. And yeah, they're going to eventually plateau because, there is a level at which you can only read so fast, right? And students that are very, very strong readers will hit this plateau and they'll stop improving in fluency very quickly, but the texts will be getting harder. So it's gonna, there's this balance, right? What you always have to do when you're doing fluency in these hot readings is these texts are going to be leveled at either the student's grade or, below or above if you're working on extension or something like that. But you want to pick the grade level text that is sensitive to the student's growth, right? So if you're picking passages that are too hard, then they're just going to have this floor effect. They don't really grow. Or if you're picking passages that are too easy, there's going to be a ceiling effect where students are just reading them really fast and you're not seeing the growth. What you want to find is what is the grade level that's going to demonstrate the student's growth when you're working on this. For many students, that's just going to be, for the vast majority of students, that's just going to be their grade level passage. For students that struggle in reading, it might be a grade below or 2. And if you're going more grades below than that, I would say fluency might not be the thing to be focusing on at that point. There are going to be other things that are feeding into accuracy and rate that you're going to want to be working on. And yeah. Okay. But anyway, in terms of the MTEL, what do you need to know? Focus on the MTEL. It is repeated reading is an evidence-based practice to improve fluency. And this is what it looks like. Okay. Lastly, we want to bridge. This is a great slide that kind of shows the bridge between objectives 1, 2, and 3, word recognition, objective 4, fluency, and then we're going to be going next into comprehension. So there will be questions on, hey, why do we practice fluency, right? Well, Fluency is, again, reading with automaticity and prosody. That is going to go into comprehension because to understand the text, you need to be able to read it accurately and quickly. You can't be spending brain power thinking about decoding the words or reading so slowly that you forget what you just read. You need to be reading quickly and accurately to understand what you're reading, right? If you're making a bunch of errors, you're obviously not going to understand what the words mean and you can't comprehend the text. And if you're going too slow, you're going to have previous sentences or previous words fall out of your working memory, and you're not going to be able to put everything together and see it as big. So you need to move through text quickly to comprehend it accurately, right? So that's how fluency goes towards comprehension. Word recognition goes into fluency because how do we increase accuracy? Well, we teach those phonological and orthographical and morphological patterns and words, and we teach all of that stuff in service of making the student a more fluent reader, which is then in service of them ultimately comprehending text. This is how we don't lose sight of the big picture. Everything is focused on comprehending the text ultimately. Why do we do hot and cold readings? So that students can comprehend. Why do we do word recognition? So students can read fluently so that they can comprehend. Let's do some questions. Okay, pause here for question 37. The correct response is B, improving the student's reading accuracy, a key component of fluency, right? So here we have a second grade teacher, and she's working with students. She analyzes the errors, just like in that method that I showed you. And then what she does is she's going to stop teaching fluency and teach the phonics knowledge. Okay, so she's going to do, hey, remember, TH says, here is a page of 10 words where TH says in the word. Great. We're practicing those words. Maybe they're the actual words in the passage, but maybe there are other words that we're teaching that phonics skill as well. So what is this going to do? This is designed to improve their accuracy, which is a key component of fluency, right? And you'll see down here that D is a very similar answer. You know that teaching phonics skills is not really related to their rate. It's not going to make them any faster necessarily if they're getting that phonics knowledge. That's not what that's designed to do. The teaching phonics knowledge explicitly is designed to make them so they're not making errors on words, right? This has, recall of large number of words, having a large sight word vocabulary is related but not a prerequisite to fluent oral reading. And this one, obviously, encouraging the student to slow down. While that is a thing that we might say to a student if we're solely focused on the word recognition piece, encouraging students to slow down is certainly not going to help their fluency because rate is a part of fluency. All right, 39, pause here. The correct answer is B, apply phonics skills and knowledge of common syllable types and inflections to read words. So you can see that this is a very similar question to the previous one, and we're going to keep hammering this home. We're going to keep hammering. The MTEL is going to really focus on the connection between word recognition and fluency and comprehension eventually. But this is a question about the connection between word recognition and fluency. So what does the student want to do to develop accurate decoding? How are we going to do that? We're going to teach the phonics skills to improve their accuracy. And one of the ways that we can teach phonics skills is by teaching them syllable types, because syllable types help us figure out what is the vowel sound in the word. And inflections is related to expression. So for the wrong answers, right, we can, let me help you look for some more tips and tricks here. We know that semantic and syntactic context clues, that is not going to help us in word identification, right? This is looking at the words around the word, to help us make a guess, right? So if we're looking at context clues, we're guessing, right? We're not looking at the word, we're not looking at the letters, we're not attending to what we need to be attending to. We're trying to fill our gap of knowledge with other information and then make an educated guess. That is not what we want to be doing. That's not explicit instruction. So anytime we're looking at this, it's not going to be correct and related to fluency. This memorizing words, as you can see in the last question, which also asked about memorizing words on a word wall by theme. Controversy of word walls aside, we can just easily eliminate this. Like this might be a thing that yeah. This is definitely not going to be related to fluency. And lastly, D, we can see, oh, guess. Nope, that's not going to be. We will never, ever, the MTEL will never say guessing is the correct thing. And right, so you have to kind of figure out, oh, this is guessing. This literally just says guess on the answer. So we can pretty easily eliminate that one. 41, pause here. The correct answer is A, providing the individual students with explicit teacher feedback with respect to their reading accuracy and prosody between readings. So this is a question that's, hey, do you know what fluency is, right? Do you know that fluency is a combination, accuracy and prosody are key components of fluency? So this is a really, really, really long question, but we can eliminate a lot of the answers and we can use some clues again in the answer. So I've told you in previous questions that anytime you see explicit, and especially this phrase altogether, explicit teacher feedback, that is something the MTEL is going to be wanting to promote you to do. So if you're answering a question affirmatively, like what should a teacher be doing, you should seriously consider any answer that has explicit and especially this phrase explicit teacher feedback. B is incorrect just because right here 10 times, just 10 times is too many. Repeated reading, we're in a repeated reading activity, we're probably going to just have the student read it, 3, 4 times, 5 maximum. 10 is just too many. It's not going to diminishing returns. It's not going to help the student. Here we can see again, look at pictures for clues. That's guessing, not going to be correct. And D, silent reading is a common practice you'll see in schools. While silent reading is not an evidence-based practice for helping students improve, and it's really silent reading is only going to benefit the students that already have the word recognition skills to be accurate, right? So if you can have benefits from silent reading, and there are benefits, but it's not an evidence-based practice to help somebody struggling with reading because you won't know what kind of errors they're making if they're reading silently, and then you won't be able to provide them with the correct instruction. All right, last question on fluency, 35. Pause here. The correct answer is D. Decoding skills are essential for the development of reading fluency to support reading comprehension, right? So again, this is another question back to that chart. What do we need to do? What is the connection between decoding skills and comprehension? Decoding makes us more accurate, which makes us more fluent. And when we are fluent readers, we are able to understand the reading better. C is a little tricky because it's just it has the right words in it. It's just backwards, right? Reading comprehension doesn't contribute to decoding skills. It's the other way around, right? Comprehension is the end result that we want to get, into which decoding is helpful. The point of reading is reading comprehension. And these are obviously just, not supported. These are just outright wrong. Development of decoding skills has little effect. That's wrong. And then decoding and reading comprehension are independent. That is also clearly incorrect based on what you've learned so far. All right, that's it for fluency. We'll see you in Objective 5.